The elevator button glowed ominously in the dimly lit hospital corridor, a beacon cutting through the quiet hours of my graveyard shift. I had been working as a night nurse at St. Gertrude's for over a year, but it never got easier. The old building creaked in a constant whisper, and shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. The hospital had its fair share of urban legends, but none more enigmatic than the story of the sealed floor. According to tales passed through hushed voices and knowing glances, the sixth floor had burned down in a mysterious fire more than 30 years ago. Supposedly, it had been abandoned since, with the stairwell door securely locked and signs declaring the floor condemned. Yet the elevator had a different story to tell. During my shifts, the call button for the sixth floor would illuminate seemingly at random, and a small electric bell would ding softly in the silence of the night. At first, I dismissed it as a quirk of the old machinery, but as the calls grew more frequent, a chill began to lodge itself in my bones. "There's nothing up there," they said. "Just ignore it," they advised. But the inexplicable summons continued, each ring echoing like a cry in the dark. One particular night, I was stationed at the nurse's hub on the fifth floor, my eyes stinging from the artificial glow of computer screens. It was the kind of night where time itself seemed to stretch and yawn, minutes crawling into hours. I scribbled in patient files, the scratch of the pen attempting to drown out my unease. The elevator chimed. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I could feel a presence building, a pressure as if the walls themselves were breathing alongside me. I glanced at the panel on the wall. The sixth-floor light radiated an unnatural glow. I rose from my chair uneasily, telling myself I was simply going to check the elevator as a formality. As I approached the sliding metal doors, a draft of cold air met me, a sudden contrast to the stuffiness that perpetually hung in the hospital. I pressed the button to open the elevator doors. As they slid aside with a metallic rumble, I was greeted by an empty compartment, its fluorescent lights flickering softly. Tentatively, I stepped inside and stared at the panel of buttons. No one had pressed the sixth-floor button, and yet the call continued to summon. Feeling foolish but unable to quash the swell of curiosity, I did something I hadn't dared before. I pressed the number 6. The ascent was accompanied by a low hum, the elevator shuddering slightly as it climbed. My heart thudded louder with every floor that ticked by. For a moment, as we stopped at the fifth floor, I considered getting out. But something compelled me to stay inside, an unseen force urging me to meet whatever lay beyond those locked doors. Finally, the bell chimed again, announcing our arrival at the sixth floor. The doors slid open with a soft hiss that seemed eerily ominous in the absence of light beyond. I hesitated, standing between the familiarity of the elevator and the unknown darkness of the abandoned floor. The stench of charred wood and old smoke suddenly filled my senses, a remnant of a disaster long past but not forgotten. Gathering my nerve, I stepped out onto the sixth floor, my shoes crunching against debris that littered the ground. The flashlight on my phone struggled against the oppressive darkness, casting spectral shadows that danced along the walls. The air was thick with silence, and that's when I realized I couldn't hear the familiar whirl of the elevator machinery anymore. The place had swallowed me whole, and I was truly alone. I walked cautiously down what had once been a hospital corridor. Doors lined the walls, some hanging ajar, others sealed closed as if harboring secrets they refused to share. Each step I took had the weight of history bearing down on it, the stories of those who once walked these halls breathing ghostly whispers in my ears. I wandered aimlessly, compelled by a force I couldn't name, until I reached a set of large double doors at the end of the hallway. They loomed ahead, a faint light spilling through the cracks, inviting in its malevolence. The scent of smoke was stronger here, almost suffocating. My stomach twisted with a mix of fear and an irrational sense of anticipation. With trembling fingers, I pushed the doors open, half expecting an inferno to greet me. Instead, I was met with a scene, replaying an eerie tableau frozen in time. The room beyond was a large ward, tables overturned and gurneys toppled as if struck by an unseen force. And then I saw them. Figures moved soundlessly in the darkness, draped in singed hospital gowns. Their faces were obscured by shadows, but their presence was undeniable. Paralyzed with terror, I stood rooted to the spot as they began to turn their heads towards me, their movements slow and deliberate. A chill washed over me as I realized they were not made of flesh and bone, but something more ethereal, ghosts of the past trapped in the shell of their former lives. One figure separated itself from the others and drifted towards me. Its eyes were hollow voids, holding a sadness that transcended my understanding. As it reached me, it extended a hand, charred fingers outstretched as if to plead for something lost. In that moment, my fear reached a crescendo, and I stumbled backward, the bitter cold of the emptiness biting at my heels. I turned and ran, fear lending speed to my feet as I retraced my steps to the elevator. I didn't dare look back as the doors closed, sealing away the phantoms in their prison of smoke and ash. The descent back to the known world was slow, the warmth of the fifth floor a stark contrast to the spectral cold above. Back at the nurses' hub, my colleagues found me shaken and silent, my skin as pale as the specters I had seen. I didn't tell them what I had encountered. How could I? The experience had left a mark, a shadow hovering at the edge of my vision even in the brightest lights. I continued my shifts at St. Gertrude, but I was different now. I was haunted by an understanding, an awareness that the past lingered just out of sight, desperate for acknowledgement, yearning for release. The elevator continued to chime for the sixth floor, and each time I felt the pull to answer. But I never returned to the burned ward, those endless halls. I had glimpsed something profound in the cold darkness. It was a call meant not just for the living, but for the lost souls still wandering in a world tethered to the echoes of past tragedies. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear the desperate cries of those forgotten spirits, a symphony of silent voices emerging from the shadows, waiting for someone to listen.